Hey, Bonehead fans, it is Joe and...
James. It's James. My name's James.
Oh, I wanted you to say your name, dickhead. Anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'm lost. Who am I?
It doesn't matter. One of the cool things that this shutdown has brought us is the ability to get people that normally are too busy to talk to us or don't want to talk to us. I'm joking. Too busy to talk to us. And our guest today is...
Robert Kurtzman.
Robert Kurtzman. If you're thinking that sounds vaguely familiar, it's because you have heard of something called K&B, Kurtzman, Nicotero, and Berger, the greatest probably effects house of all time, or at least one of them, probably at the most volume. And
or even if you haven't necessarily heard of the special effects studio, you don't dig into the behind the scenes stuff. You've probably heard of such films as Evil Dead 2, some of the Halloween films, some of the Nightmare on Elm Street films.
We can keep going and going.
House on Haunted Hill, Bubba Hotep.
Mr. Kurtzman's also a distinguished director. He gave us Wishmaster, several other movies. We're not going to give you a long intro. We only had about 45 minutes with him, but it was nice enough for him to do it live from his studio. Now, the cool thing about this is if you're listening to this, we appreciate it. Keep listening. But the YouTube version of this is going to be a little different because, why, James?
Because after we did the interview, we were fortunate enough to get a brief tour of the workshop via video. If you do like The Haunting of Hill House, the Netflix series, and you always thought, I'd love to see them dead body props. Well, good news.
Or Dr. Sleep, and you thought, boy, that scene where they killed the little boy, I sure would like to see that boy body that they used. Well, it's not real, but we totally can show you that. So go on over to our YouTube.
And the detail, by the way, I want to say real quick, the other reason you need to see the video, you're going to see more than you saw in the film. Because we got a brief story about the director of the film, Mike Flanagan, making specific requests for it to be even more visual than you see in the film. So you need to, if you listen to the audio, I appreciate the fact podcasts are audio. Hey, I dig it. We have that discussion with Chad sometimes. I'm mentioning Chad because he's not here. Screw you, Chad.
Chad had to work, so we
I'm picking on Chad.
I just want to say a little quick nice thing about that.
I know. Jeez, I can't even. You try to tear a man down once a week, and people get mad at you. But anyway, no, we get a brief story about how accurate he wanted the body. So if you've seen Dr. Sleep, believe me, there's some stuff that was built into the sculpts that you didn't get to see on film because it was covered with dirt.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks to Marcy for not only setting this up, but also taking the time to talk to us afterwards and give us the tour because Kurtzman had to work. We appreciate it. She was absolutely fantastic. Big props to her. Hey, Marcy, if you're listening to this or watching, you need to represent somebody to do cons. I'm joking. I got an agent, but no, seriously. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Maybe not. I don't know. Thank you so much.
You're only joking if it doesn't lead to anything. But if it could lead to something.
If she wants to make a little change, getting me to Dragon Con, then absolutely, by all means, getting me in the door, I appreciate it. I need to stop sucking up. Let's move right along. Thank you so much. Enjoy our Kurtzman interview. Mr. Kurtzman, how are you?
Hey, good. How you doing?
We're in the middle of hell, brother, but other than that, we're okay.
Yeah, same here. I just went to the store and stocked up because they just locked us down.
Yeah.
Yeah, Georgia, the governor finally did that.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah, well, Florida just did it.
The county locked down heavy today, so.
Oh, really? Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Like I was saying to Marcy, if it makes you feel any better, James here is. I'm Joe Lewis. Nice to meet you.
Night, Joe. Hi.
It's James.
James,
we're stuck at home with our kids and doing our professional jobs in higher education. If it makes you feel any better.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, at least we're lucky enough we get to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine, Mick Strawn, who's a production designer. I don't know if you know him from Nightmare.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, Mick, that we're talking on the phone Saturday, and he was talking about, well, the good thing about being a grip in L.A. is with all the layoffs and how things are tumultuous all the time, everyone knows how to put it in the toilet. So
that's true. Time to work around the house now.
Yeah, make some extra money. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time. We'll get right into it. Actually, oddly enough, we met at Scare Fest in Lexington, Kentucky years ago. I don't know if you even remember being there. I don't expect you to remember us, but I wondered if you remembered even being there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Although I've done quite a few of those, so like they kind of mix up a lot.
They all go together.
Yeah.
We were going through your catalog of work, and I didn't know how long I'd have, and I assumed I wouldn't have a ton of time. So I was trying to think of a way to approach it that you haven't been asked 1,000 times. So here's something I'm very curious about, and it may be because I'm middle-aged with a 2.5-year-old. You gave up a lot to move back to Ohio for your family, correct?
Correct.
Can we talk about that for a minute? I find that fascinating.
Sure. Yeah.
You want to talk about it with me? So what was the decision? You wanted to raise your family in Ohio, and that's where you're from, correct?
Yeah, yeah. All my family's in Ohio, so and all the cousins, all the kids' cousins and everything were there. And they were all about the same age, so we wanted to bring them up there around their grandparents and everyone.
Yeah.
But on top of that, I was just ready to start doing my own thing anyway. So as far as film productions and my own effects company, and I just didn't want to be in LA anymore. So
is it just the atmosphere, or is it just the town, or you're just used to Ohio? I'm just curious.
Yeah. It was all of that. It was all of the the Hollywood nonsense. I'd spent 10 years pitching movies and setting movies up and selling them, and then just sat around waiting for things to happen, and decided I wanted to make them happen on my own.
Right.
So, I just went out and raised my own money and started producing my own stuff.
Which is interesting because now you're set in Atlanta, correct?
Yeah.
Where most of the movies are made now.
Yeah.
So is that better or worse than Hollywood as far as just being there, the town?
In Atlanta?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Oh, no, I love Atlanta.
Okay.
It's a different vibe than LA.
It's Southern.
Yeah.
It's Southern, but it's not completely Southern, right? It's metropolitan
exactly.
Southern.
Yeah.
Because I always tell people when they come to Kentucky, we work at the University of Kentucky, or I do, and I always say, yeah, Lexington's not Kentucky. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're surrounded by a sea of red in this little blue section.
Yeah. And there's, this Atlanta is kind of it's got a lot of trees in the city proper, so it's like, you don't have to go far to be, out in the country, and there's a lot of lakes and everything. There's plenty of stuff to do. There's great bike trails,
Yeah. Okay. So James, do you want to go ahead with your question about?
Well, I wanted to ask one question because you've worked on films across different genres, all of that stuff, all the different elements. Is there any difference? Because we've had people answer this question differently, and I wanted to know what you thought. Is there a different way you approach special effects and makeup between a comedy and a horror film, between all the different genres, or is it just whatever's needed at the time?
No, it's all pretty much the same. The subject matter is different, and obviously comedies, the gags can be a little different. They're more humorous, and then the monster movies, of course, you have more of a design element there with creature stuff and how you approach that, and of course the blood and guts stuff. But the process itself is pretty much the same, whether you're doing a prosthetic makeup or a puppet or a animal puppet or whatever. It doesn't matter what the genre is. It's the same process.
Okay. So going back through your history, and we could ask a ton of questions about makeup effects. We could ask, and I don't want to cover ground that's been covered many, many times, especially about how K&B was started and things like that. And I want to ask you some different things. So I'd like to talk to you about your directing career a little bit. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So can you talk about setting up I actually think we were talking about this last night when we were getting prepared, is that I think Wishmaster holds up really well. But I know that wasn't your first movie. The first one was Demolitionist. Can you talk about setting that up? And specifically, I'm assuming because you had so many connections, you were able to get a lot of those cameos and a lot of those different people in both movies. I mean, Bruce Campbell has a cameo in The Demolitionist, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I reached out to all my friends and people I'd worked with over the years, and wanted to, work with them, even if it was limited, like Bruce coming in for a day,
Right.
And we just wanted to hang out with our friends when we make the movies, and have a good time. So
right. So has it always been your desire to be a director, and special effects were the way to get into it, and makeup effects?
Yeah, I mean, as a kid growing up, being a John Carpenter fan and watching, all the various other horror directors that I grew up on, I always wanted to direct. But when I first got into the business, you have that idea of like, I want to be a director, but then you realize that there's a lot to learn before you can do that, and so that creative outlet of doing special effects just was kind of a stepping stone to that, and after years of doing that, I felt confident enough to tackle a movie as a director. So,
what's your favorite John Carpenter film?
Assault on Precinct 13.
Really?
Yeah,
that's one I don't hear often.
Yeah, and then The Thing, of course, The Thing. But
for me, it's always The Thing. Yeah. I actually, Nick Cotero told me a story once about what I don't know if you've ever heard it. What Carpenter signed on? Oh Jesus, director of The Shawshank Redemption. Frank Darabont's posters, because Darabont, hey Frank, go fuck yourself. I met John a few years ago and I said, "Is that true?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I was like, "Here." He signed all my posters. Joe, go fuck yourself. It actually was a lot of fun. We do a lot of convention work, as far as I do a lot of moderating the main panels and whatnot. So it's been nice to get to talk to a few people outside of it. Anyway, huge John Carpenter fan because, he was raised in Kentucky. But I appreciate that. It's also in Precinct 13 is your favorite then. It's different.
So you are a big Carpenter fan, and then you worked on In the Mouth of Madness. Was that an interesting experience to go from being a fan to working with John Carpenter
and do a Lovecraft film that isn't necessarily called a Lovecraft film?
Yeah, no, it was really exciting to work with him. But we first worked with him on Body Bags for Showtime, and so then that led into the other stuff with John. And I'm trying to think. Before Mouth of Madness, didn't we do? I can't remember if it was before or after we did.
Let me pull up your IMDb.
Yeah, Village of the Damned, and
I think Village of the Damned came right after In the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah,
but I may be wrong because Mouth of Madness was from New Line, right? Yeah.
I just had to ask about In the Mouth of Madness because that's one of my go-to films. So,
cool.
Thank you for your work on that.
Yeah, thanks. No, I really like that film a lot. So.
You told me a story several years ago when I got to ask you a few questions then, and you said the one good thing about working with John was that he's not a screamer. Do you even? And I know
he's pretty calm and laid back. So, and he's very open if he doesn't like something. Like if you bring rubber he's always here come the rubber monsters, and and. He used to say all the rubber effects guys are prima donnas because we're all so picky about stuff and things. So
like Rob not wanting to light, not like Rob Bottin not wanting to put light on anything that he made that was beautiful, right?
Yeah.
I understand that. Can you explain a little bit about that as far as the cinematography of not wanting to show where the hoses and the lines are? Can you talk about that?
Well, not just that. I mean, anymore, like things are just thrown in your face, and you like, especially with CGI and everything, they feel they need to show it. And if you go old school, it's all about what you don't see and what glimpses you see in the shadows, and it makes it creepier, in my opinion. But
agreed.
You see the monster crawling on the ceiling and jumping all over the place. It's less effective than seeing it creeping behind a bookshelf or something where you just get a piece of it, and leaves more to the imagination.
So do you agree that CGI is just a tool, right? Like any tool, it can be overused?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah, you can do it on both ends, but it's a great tool when used properly, or when they mix it up. And
that's right. When you mix the practical with the CGI and you're removing things so that you can't see where the magic trick's at.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. I understand that. The issue with practical, in my opinion, and I wonder if you agree with this, is that practical, for example, The Thing, we can talk about The Howling, we can talk about American Werewolf in London. You look at them 40 years later, it looks pretty good.
Oh yeah, it still holds up.
CGI 20 years on, not so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, there's also leaps and bounds with CGI from the time it first started. I mean, if you look at, like, for instance, From Dusk Till Dawn, there's some CGI work in that, but it was kind of at the beginning of that whole thing, and it still holds up for the most part. But even on Wishmaster, for instance, we had some fairly crude CGI, but it was like the first time we were kind of using it and experimenting. And then, you know, today you have, like, there's such advances in technology that they can make something look really real.
Yeah. Do you think that those advances, though, still 20 years on, or that's my theory, is that yeah, it just keeps going with this, and 20 years on, it's still going to be maybe similar to the Lon Chaney Jr. the Wolfman transformation. It looks really good then. Now you look at it, it's like, but I don't know. I was curious. But in the 80s, the special effects guys were the rock stars, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And now it's like, I don't know, it's not the same anymore. But back then it was everybody was jumping on the bandwagon of, like, every horror film had to have rubber monsters and prosthetics in it. And so it was a great time to actually be, you know, coming up in the industry.
When did you move to Hollywood?
Moved to Hollywood in 1984 when I was 19.
That was brave. That's ballsy.
Yeah.
What made you do it? What gave you the drive? Being from Ohio, not necessarily a big city, correct?
No, really.
My wife is from rural Ohio. That's the reason we're talking. Yeah.
I'm from a town that it's a village, actually. It's only like 3,500 people or something. But no, you know, it was the only place at that time to go to even learn any of this stuff, or, you know, get into the business. So I just up and did it. I'd never been to LA or a huge city like that, and my parents took me out, dropped me off, and left.
Really? So you didn't get in, like, your old beater car and just drive across the country and go?
No, I dropped me off, left, and then I picked up a really cheap car out there, so I wouldn't have to drive stuff across country. I basically just set up, once I got out there, I got a little one-room apartment with the kitchenette in it. And that was it. And then I, you know, spent some time there before I actually got hired to work at John Buechler's after I got out of makeup school.
Which makeup school did you go to?
At that time, Joe Blasco's, I think, was kind of the only thing around.
Okay.
That's one of the questions I had was, I was just wanting to know, I think it's interesting because when I was a child, I watched movies, I loved movies, but I never thought about the makeup and all of that stuff. I enjoyed it. And you talked about that being kind of the only option at the time. Have you seen anything change where my children love to watch Face Off and see how all this stuff is done now and things like that? Do you think that's causing any sort of shift in the way people even begin to think about pursuing that area?
Oh yeah, there's a lot more people interested in it now, I think, and there's a lot more schools now out for it.
Savini's school.
Yeah. Now, whether there's more jobs, I'm not sure. You know, it all comes down to the artist. Everybody can want to be, you know, a makeup artist or anything, but it depends on their drive and their talent, whether they're going to, you know, succeed or not.
So that hasn't changed in 40 years. It's really still about drive and talent.
Yeah. I mean, that's all we look at. We don't care if they went to college, have a degree or anything. When we're looking at portfolios, we just look at the work. All that counts is their ability. And the degree doesn't matter, in my opinion. Unless you want to teach, it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead, James.
For people interested in that, you mentioned a portfolio. What sort of goes into a portfolio? If somebody's thinking they want to look at doing this professionally, what would you recommend people prepare for as far as having this concept of a portfolio in place, if they're just starting to think about it?
Yeah, I mean, sculptures, their makeups, prosthetics, and not necessarily just blood. Most of the time, we don't even want to see blood and guts unless it's really something that's anatomically correct and
right.
but, you know, just like bloody hamburger meat on somebody's face, we're not interested in character makeups and you know, prosthetics, like whether it's a vampire or the wolf man or whatever, or just some crazy kind of goofy character, you know, like a Harry Potter looking thing or something, you know. It's all about seeing their sculpting ability and their application skills,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, painting and everything. So
curious because there is literally over 100 movies I could ask you about off the top of my head, but I'm trying to talk about something that you maybe not normally talk about. Can you talk about Bubba Hotep for a few minutes?
Sure.
Yeah, and working with Coscarelli.
Well, I love Don. I started working with him on Phantasm 2.
Yeah.
And we became really good friends. We're good friends to this day. And I enjoy, you know, getting that phone call from Don every few years, and when he does a project, and I've been lucky enough to be involved with most of them. So
yeah,
Bubba Hotep was a fun project because Bruce was on it, and it was a script that I read, and I just couldn't believe they were going to make it. It's one of those oddball films like Tusk, where you just get this script and you're like, what the fuck, you know?
Well, that we'll talk about Kevin in a second, but yeah, I agree with you. I know a lot of people love Phantasm, but my favorite Coscarelli film will and probably always will be Bubba Hotep. It's just too weird to live, but it does. It exists.
Yeah.
I saw it at a midnight screening in an old theater that's not a chain theater that. Well, hopefully it'll still be alive after this is all said and done. And it's probably one of the most perfect midnight screenings I've ever been to in my entire life. It played just like that all the way down the line, every beat. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Just the perfect audience, midnight, amazing. It was huge. I had the privilege of, and I didn't realize he was going to be 8 foot tall, by the way. I'm 6'1", and Coscarelli just stood over me as we were about to do the panel.
It's a very tall guy.
The very tall guy. It's taller than the tall man. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Kevin Smith. How did you get hooked up with Kevin?
Let's see. Dave, there's a producer called Dave Greathouse who was a producer on that film, and Dave had produced a series of pictures that I did the effects on, but also I directed 2 movies for him. I did Buried Alive and Deadly Impact for him.
Which James bought off of you from that Scarefest that we watched that Halloween drunk.
Which one?
Those 2 movies, James bought them from you from that Scarefest.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And you said, now hang out with your friends and drink these with some. I know you don't remember any of this. We do a horror movie, a horror. I'm so sorry, sir. Sorry, coffee went down the wrong way. And we watched those drinking just a few weeks after that.
Yeah.
Keep going. Just to let you know, your art has been appreciated.
So he had the script and he sent it to me and said, you know, I'm doing this Kevin Smith movie. Would you be interested in working with Kevin? And I'm like, of course. And then he sent the script, and I just was like, what I have to be involved with this because nobody's ever going to make anything like this again. And, you know, it's definitely one of a kind project.
Oh, it and Red State completely. I agree.
Yeah.
No one else could have made those movies. Yes.
Yeah. So he hooked me up with Kevin. We had a conversation, and then I just dropped right into designing, and we only had like I think 5 weeks to build everything on that show, which was crazy. But it was Dave basically said, well, you can, if you don't do it in 5 weeks, we're not doing the show because we have a target window. I think it had to do with Johnny Depp's availability for his role, so they had to do it at a certain time, but it worked out great. I had a lot of fun on that project, and Kevin was great to work with, and has been great since now.
Yeah, because you've done Yoga Hosers, right?
Yeah, and then Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah.
Reboot.
Okay, so like I said, I know we have a short amount of time. James, do you want to ask about the haunting? James last night was like, we got to talk about the Haunting of Hill House. We got to talk about.
Yeah, I was about to say that because I wanted to bring that up because I have a couple of friends and colleagues who they made their ringtone where she's saying no, 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 no. But then also on that show, there's tons of stuff in the background. There's tons of stuff like that. So I'm assuming that was some hidden makeup work that went on there and hidden setup and things like that. So I just wanted to ask about what's the process for, that was done as a television show. It's longer. So what kind of, with The Haunting of Hill House, how did that come about, and what was the difference on working on a project like that?
Well, Mike Flanagan, the director, he approached it as like one big long film, with the exception of some things that would cross over or have to be shot at different times. But it wasn't like we just shot one episode and dropped in another. It was like one big long film project.
Okay.
And it was also the same director, which is unusual because for TV they usually have a different director. So there was a continuity there. Having Mike directing the whole thing, it was better for us, the creatives and the departments, not having a new creative dropping in for every episode. And then, we kind of knew what was going to happen 5 episodes down the line because we were discussing it now and the director was there, the whole time.
Yeah.
So, with TV, most of the time you get like 5 episodes and then you have kind of outlines for the rest as they're being written. So that was the difference, I guess. Yeah. For film, you have the script, it's pretty much there. And then, so we kind of knew that there was some things peppered in toward the end, but we weren't sure. And they would change things and add things. So we had a lot of stuff that got piled in the later episodes that we weren't expecting. But overall, it was a great experience. I mean, it was, I got involved with it because I'd done Gerald's Game
mm-hmm.
with Mike. And prior to that, I had been talking to him about doing a movie called Somnia, which actually became Before I Wake.
Oh, okay.
Which is his other film. And so we had conversations. I didn't end up doing that show, but then later, I did a film called Bye Bye Man, The Bye Bye Man, for the producer, Trevor Macy. So Trevor brought me into Gerald's Game. That was my first experience with Mike. And then I just bounced onto The Haunting and then eventually Dr. Sleep.
I think Mike Flanagan is a visionary. I don't think he gets, even with the credit he gets, I don't think he gets the credit he gets. I think if he were coming along in the 80s, he would have been a rock star. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He makes really good movies, and he's got a real great eye, and he's a great screenwriter. So.
Yeah, he really is. And I'm wondering, is he as laid back or as docile as I've seen behind in the making of? Is he really that person in real life?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Dr. Sleep. I wish more people had seen it because I'm actually not a fan of the book. I'm a huge Stephen King fan. If you pan over this is my basement. If you pan over here, you have first editions of almost every Stephen King novel, like every other fat geek on earth. And that's fine. Go ahead and laugh. To thy own self be true, right? I'm not a huge fan of the book. It was okay, but I really loved the movie. I really liked the movie. And he pulled off a magic trick that I didn't know could be done, was that it was a fairly decent, faithful adaptation of the book and a love letter to Kubrick, on top of King never even caring for the Kubrick version. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? How did you feel about the movie? What did you work on? Can you talk about a little bit about Dr. Sleep?
Well, I really love the movie.
Yeah.
And I really like the 3-hour cut.
Yeah, I haven't got to see it yet.
Yeah, it's there's a little it's not that much different. There's little things in there that kind of just help with some of the character development.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like there was a ton of new effects added in or anything like that. Nothing really.
The things that you lose when you already have a horror film over 2 hours.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much everything we shot's in there. There wasn't anything that ended up on the cutting room floor or anything. Mike, during the process, our biggest challenge on that was just recreating the ghosts from the Overlook. And you know, Mike gave us a little leeway to kind of they needed to feel like Mrs. Massey needed to feel like Mrs. Massey from the original, but we didn't have to match her exactly.
Okay.
Just in essence. So we kind of, you know, the placement of the wounds and the sores on her and everything were similar, and but we didn't want to actually follow that exact look, but just have the essence of it, or you know,
I understand.
like it. So that and the other ghosts that were tied into the original, you know, they found really good doppelgangers of these actors that they really looked like them, and that really helped. But you know, it was for us the greatest part of it was to just walk on those sets
and be on the Overlook.
We built the Overlook interiors, and we were like kids, man, with big grins on our face, because we'd walk onto the stage like at the beginning of the build, and we'd see the walls going up, and then suddenly, you know, we see the plaster going on, and then we see all the details as every week would get more detailed, and then wallpaper were going on, and then you're like, oh my God, we're in the Overlook right now. It's amazing, you know. And then probably the saddest thing, and it was the same with The Haunting, the saddest thing was probably when they, you know, the day they wrapped, they started tearing down these different sets, and the Haunting house was just amazing. And you know, literally the night of wrap, they started tearing stuff down, and we were like all sad.
So,
because all that work goes into it, and it's beautiful, and you always think, isn't there some place we could put this so other people can enjoy it?
We were all saying, I wish I just had a warehouse. I'd buy it, move it, sit it in the warehouse, and just live in a movie set.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Put some running water in it and be done.
Yeah. Be done and enjoy it. Every time you walk in, you would be living in the Overlook. I mean, some people would be excited to come there, and some people not so much. But that would actually eliminate the people you probably don't want to talk to anyway, coming over to your house. You could be Peter Jackson. He put the Hobbit hole. He put bag in, right? Yeah, he has bag in. So, you don't have to answer this, but what is your favorite crazy batshit story out of 30-some, almost 40 years of working in Hollywood, in movies and TV? I know it's tough. I bet you have 5,000.
I got probably two fun ones. One, okay, so we did this movie, Austin Powers, Goldmember.
Yep.
And there was a day we were on set, and we had Mike Myers in the Fat Bastard outfit, and there was a sumo wrestling scene. It was downtown LA, but they were supposed to be in Japan, and they had a lot of Japanese people in the audience, and then they had this sumo wrestler thing going on, and Mike was wearing what's called a cool suit underneath his fat suit, which keeps him cool. You plug a water hose into it and pump ice water through it, and so he was hooked up to that prior to the scene starting. So they get ready, and they're rolling, and the audience is all sitting around. Well, I'm off the set there and watching, and I realized that sorry, there was a bang.
That's okay. I'm just making sure the bodies behind you aren't moving.
No, they're not. The umbilical cord that hooks up to the water pump was hanging out of the crack of his ass. So it was like, you know, 6 inches of something dangling out of his butt. And I didn't even think of it. I'm just like, oh my God, they're rolling. That can't be in the shot. So I jumped up, ran in, grabbed the hose, and shoved it up his ass, not realizing. And the entire audience could just burst into tears. You know, they were laughing so hard. And then I just walked out, and Howard's looking at me, and he's going, look at everybody's laughing. You just shoved your hand up Mike's ass, you know, Fat Bastard's ass. So that was one. The other one was probably the craziest thing. Was our second day of shooting on Wishmaster. The line producer called me the morning just before I was going to set to shoot, and he said, "Have you been watching the news?" And I said, "No." And the line producer, Russ Markowitz, and he said, "Turn on Channel 4 or whatever it was at the time." So I put on the news, and there's a camera truck driving down the street with the tailgate open, and the cameras are falling out the back. The tailgate's shooting sparks off, and I'm like, "What's that?" And he's like, "That's our camera truck, and those are our cameras." And I'm like, "What the hell?" And he's some guy broke into the camera truck and stole it, and the cops were chasing him, and it was helicopters flying overhead filming the whole thing. And then so I'm like, "So what do we do today?" He goes, "We're scrambling right now to get new equipment brought in to complete the day." So the second day of shooting, I think it was at least 4 or 5 hours late shooting that day because we were waiting on equipment. And it was it was the alley sequence with Buck Flower and Andy is a gin, you know, that whole pharmacy thing, and Reggie Bannister. So that was the other crazy thing.
Those are fantastic, sir. James, did you have some questions? I have one more because I know
no, go ahead.
A certain amount of time.
Yeah, go ahead. I want to be careful.
I know you've been asked about this. There's one filmmaker that I haven't really. Well, there's more than one. There's some that have passed that I'll never meet. I'm sure you're the same way. But what's your best Sam Raimi story? Sam Raimi.
What's my best
Sam Raimi story? Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I know you said one of your best experiences was working on Army of Darkness because it was Sam, it was Bruce, all three of you there. So I was just curious, what's your best Sam story?
I don't really have. I mean, there's so many. Most of them you can see on the behind the scenes videos with us goofing off on set with him and stuff. But no, the thing I love about Sam the most, I think, when we're working on a film of that type or any, is that he he stands behind the monitor and he does all the voices. Like if you have a puppet and you're operating a puppet, he'll stand back there and go, "Yeah," and he'll do that. Yeah, bring on the dancing girls or whatever it is. It's like, and he just does the voice, so yeah. He's like, "Storm the castle," and he's always in character doing it. So that's always the best, and it's funny because we do that now too. Like if we're operating a puppet, we're always going, yeah, making noises and stupid shit. But
because you're a nerd, right? You're a geek. Yeah. You're just like we're all the same. You just happen to be really successful at what you've done. So speaking on all that success, just the accolades that you've gotten, the movies that you've worked on, what are things you still want to do? What are movies that are there stories that you still like to tell? Do you still want to direct more? What do you want to do? What have you not done that you'd like to do?
Yeah, I'm still developing some movie projects. Hopefully I'll be doing one in the next year if the business turns around anytime soon now. But
well, it's been good for us because we've gotten a few interviews in the last couple of weeks, like yourself.
Yeah, everybody's available.
Well, normally they wouldn't give us. They would be like, Bonehead Weekly, no. But thank you so much for it. But so is there a big thing? Is there a dream project for you?
No, I mean I can't really talk about it yet. I don't like to put the cart before the horse,
I know. Bonehead was looking for an exclusive.
Yeah. But other than that, I still enjoy doing makeup. I'm trying to really just work with talented filmmakers or that I think have a vision or look at scripts that I think are special in some way. Back when you start your career, you kind of jump on anything you can, just as long as it makes a buck. As long as it pays your overhead, which is kind of true the same now, but I've been doing this for so long, I really don't have time to do anything other than look for projects that are going to be kind of special and have some sort of afterlife
right
that people are going to like, which I've been lucky enough to do over the years, work on a lot of even small movies that have a following and that are something special, like John Dies at the End or Late Phases. I mean, they're small movies, but gave us a chance to do something cool. And
what is something that you've worked on that has lasted and you never would have guessed it? I know it's an odd question too.
I mean, well, I wouldn't at the time, a movie like Intruder or something, you know, which people seem to really like even years later. And at that time, and we were just making this like really low budget grocery store killer movie, and
with your buddy Sam and
yeah.
Dan, from Evil Dead 2. What's his name? Oh crap! I actually
Danny Hicks.
Danny Hicks. I couldn't remember Danny Hicks's name. Sorry. Yeah, who's the villain? Yeah, I can see that. You wouldn't probably think that 30 years on that people would still be talking about it.
Right. And, you know, it's kind of one of those movies. It keeps getting another edition or something that comes out. I know they just put the Blu-ray out not too long ago and remastered it and, you know.
Right. Okay. Well, is there any upcoming projects you'd like to talk about that are already done that you can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? We did something we just finished it. I can't really talk much about it. I mean, you can probably read a little bit on the thing, but it's a movie with the Russo brothers called Cherry. It's not
Russo brothers. Never heard of. Do they do
a genre film? It's not a genre film, so it's a drama, but it was kind of a special experience for us. So, and I keyed the entire makeup department, so I did everything on that show.
Really?
Which was really cool. You know, and it does have some cool stuff in it. But it's really a drama, and it's gonna be something special, I think. So
good. Well, like I said,
Tom Holland and
right.
Yeah.
They must be low budget filmmakers. I've never heard of them.
Yeah, they're up and comers.
They're up and comers. They haven't just been shooting in Atlanta for the last 15 years, right? Making Marvel films. That's okay. All right. Well, I know you said she said you only had 30 or 40 minutes. Thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to talk about before we go? Normally I would say, is there anything you do want to talk about, anything you don't want to talk about, but I wanted to get right through it. I appreciate your time. Nothing? You good?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well,
thank you very much.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks. Have a great weekend.
I think that one of those behind you is a Twitcher. You say they're not, but they look great.
The bodies?
Yeah. You've got a Twitcher. All right.
Why are they staring at me? Thank you again.
Oh, congratulations on the kittens.
I
don't understand.
They're cute. They're terrifying us right now, but we keep thinking they're going to fall from the second floor here all the time because they're crawling all over everything.
Yeah, we have cats. I understand. So I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much for your time, sir. Have a wonderful day, and we will hopefully see you at the movies.
Thanks, gentlemen.
No problem.
Thank you.
On the computer right now.
So these are from Hill House.
So these bodies are from Hill House. This is the granny. And because she was in the coffin and covered up, we actually got away with constructing her of silicone and foam just to be a little cheaper. But everything had to be perfect on her face. And again, this was in the coffin. So the rest of her's foam. And then this piece right here is actually half a body because Flanagan wanted to make sure it was on camera to do the embalming. So a tube was actually going in, pushing fluid, and it came out the other end, which we had a tube in a bucket.
Right.
Victoria Pedretti, her body, this is actually from a Kevin Smith movie that is through Ringling Brothers, and I can tell you about that later. But this is Victoria Pedretti's kind of perfect body with the autopsy incision scar. And then she was also in the coffin as well. And again, we kind of switched it out. We had to switch arms. So when she was in the coffin, this had to be a perfect hand that was up across her. So we took the modeled hands, which are around here someplace. We cut those off. Now, this is the wonderful autopsy body.
Yeah.
Which we didn't have to obviously put any kind of weights or reinforcement in. So this one is great because this is actually just a joke prop. So this had all the flaps to be able to open. There was the bag of the guts and things and fake blood and stuff that they pull out. This is one of my favorite parts right here.
Oh, really? Oh, that's so cool.
This is so legit that the actual consultant that we had on set, she sent me photos so that I could print for the guys to do the sculpt. She said it was just so ridiculously close, she couldn't believe it. And she actually played the assistant in the autopsy scenes. So you see her, this is Grandma's body.
Yeah.
And as a little treat from Dr. Sleep, we have down here, we don't have this posted anywhere yet. This is Jacob Tremblay's body that was inside the shallow dirt grave.
Yeah, when they dug him up, right.
And they dug him up, except the only thing was exposed was his face. However, Flanagan, again, he requested certain items because when they were digging at him, they broke his rib, so there's a rib sticking out. And then we covered it all up with dirt. So
that is terrifyingly cool.
That was great. Yeah, and then another little treat on the bottom shelf, which we have in plastic to preserve her a little bit more. That's the toddler. I don't know if you can see that from Dr. Sleep. That was the puppet. I was able to puppeteer, and yeah, it was frightening carrying her around.
Yeah, I'll say so. So you just have bodies lying around and pieces of scalp and all that. Yeah, that's
we do. Yeah,
that's just an average day.
That's a fist from Jay and Silent Bob reboot. That's Jacob Tremblay's face and his wig. These are wigs from Dr. Sleep that weren't used.
Yeah.
And all various other wigs and so forth. And of course another awesome little addition is that
that looks so cool up there.
Yeah, that's from Jay and Silent Bob. That is Iron Bob. That is the actual screen worn costume.
That is awesome.
And yeah, that's pretty cool. And as you can see, the posters
absolutely
line the stairs. You can see the Tusk bust, I think, on the wall up
there. You can see it right up there. Do you guys do tours?
We do for privately, kind of.
I know.
if you contact us and you're in town and it works out, it's kind of yeah. But we don't.
No, I get it. No, I get it. Yeah. When I push record, I'll stop recording in a second and I'll mention how close Lexington is to Atlanta and how often we're down there. Sorry.
Oh, great. Oh, no, that's great. Just real quick, this is a biggie. That is the last worn appliance for Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger from the Goldbergs.
Oh, is that from the Goldbergs? So Kurtzman did the makeup not only for the Goldbergs, but he also did it for a drive-in benefit last year or 2 years ago, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
So fans.
Yeah, and this is just, general. You walk around and these kind of things just laying around. I usually like again, if you can see that, it's
weapons.
Weapons, yeah. So obviously, when I give a tour, it's usually there's usually like the most bizarre things that
Right.
I don't know. Everybody picks out something different. But anyway, that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'll stop recording.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.